This evening we'll continue with our meditation on the number 248, the number which has recently been proposed to be a possible exact description of our physical universe, containing 248 elementary particles. So maybe perhaps the most beautiful and simple, straightforward gematria of 248, which relates to reality and substance within reality. You know that in physics, elementary particles can either be matter particles with half spin or force particles with full spin. But more abstractly, all of it is a form of substance, of something. Even though an electron is not a thing, meaning that even a matter particle is not what we usually consider to be matter. Certainly not a force particle, which is a messenger particle. Certainly not virtual particles, which are even further removed from what we normally consider to be substance. But once more generally, everything is some form of matter in a very, very abstract sense. And the word for matter in Hebrew is chomer. And chomer equals exactly 248. It's a very simple three-letter word, which is once more the simplest word, which suggests very strongly that there's something essential within matter relating to this number 248. Now there's something very unique about this word matter, 248, in Hebrew, that makes it even more unique as a word, because it's a three-letter word, as most all roots in Hebrew have three letters. But what's special about this three-letter root is that each one of its six permutations, if you have three letters, or the idiom of Sefer Yetzirah, 3 stones build 6 houses, meaning that 3 letters can permute and give us 6 different permutations, which in general, not all of which will be words, and certainly not all of which will be actually roots in the Hebrew language of the Tanakh, of the Bible. There are only 7 examples or cases of 3 letters, of a group of 3 letters, that all 6 permutations are actually roots in the Bible. And one of the most important, if not the most important, is the word chomer itself. All of its 6 permutations are roots. So clearly all of the 6 permutations relate very, very strongly to this basic abstract sense of substance, of matter, of somethingness. One of the 6 permutations is rechem, which means womb, which is also the root, the source of the word rachamim, which means mercy and compassion, which is the inner property of tiferet, of beauty, and in the Zohar is referred to as the body of creation, the body in the sense of an all-inclusive matter idiom of creation. And all of matter is born from within the vacuum of creation. The first stage of creation is to create a vacuum, which is likened in Kabbalah to a primordial womb, from which all is born. And what's an innovation, a chiddush for us, that obviously science will not explain, that all is born through some process that involves, or that reflects God's, the Creator's, mercy and compassion. Just like in our previous class we talked a little bit about chesed, loving kindness, which is a very close and related attribute of the heart. And now we're actually consummating in a certain way loving kindness by discussing rachamim, which is mercy. Loving kindness is the special property, the attribute of the first of the patriarchs, Abraham, who himself equals 248, as we saw. And rachamim is the property especially of Jacob, Yaakov, the third patriarch. But the prophet tells us, and especially in the Sefer Tanya, the 32nd chapter of Tanya, we're taught in depth that in order to manifest love and loving kindness, especially when for some external reason it's been concealed, the way to reassume and reassert loving kindness is through arousing great mercy and compassion over that soul who is so deep in exile or deep in the darkness that it's difficult to directly relate to him through the property of loving kindness. In any event, the two are very, very related to one another, as we even can understand in just hearing the words loving kindness and compassion. The wording in the Bible for this is Yaakov asher padat Abraham, the Jacob, which means compassion, redeems and reveals loving kindness. So now we have this image of a womb, which is the first stage of creation, to create a vacuum or a universe to be, and through compassion as a means of expressing loving kindness, all of our 248 components of primordial matter, which is Chomer, are created. So Rachamim is actually just Rechem. This root is one of the 6 permutations of Chomer. In Kabbalah, we'll not now explain this in detail, but in Kabbalah we're taught that the 6 permutations themselves correspond to the 6 attributes of the heart in any 3-letter word or root. So, and if we know the place, the position of one of the 6 permutations, how that corresponds to one of the 6 attributes of the heart, then automatically we through a mathematical process, a permutation theory or group theory process, we can immediately identify the position of each one of the permutations, how they correspond themselves to the 6 attributes of the heart. So the most obvious one in our case is Rechem and Rachamim, which is Tiferet. To explain this just one level deeper, in Kabbalah we're taught that the Tiferet, of the body of that persona, which is called a Parzuf, that corresponds to all of the emotions, all of the emotive attributes of the heart. Its body, which is its Tiferet, its compassion, is directly manifest from the womb of the mother, or in the words of Kabbalah, the womb of the mother extends until the Tiferet of the persona, which is referred to as the small countenance, Ze'er Anpin. So it's very clear that particular permutation relates to Tiferet. And then, according to our mathematical permutation process, it becomes even more clear that Homer, which is our primordial matter, is the permutation that relates to Chesed. And actually, each one of the letters of this 3-letter combination, whether it's Homer or Rechem or one of the other of the 6 permutations, each letter stands very simply in the Hebrew language and in Kabbalah for a word itself, all of which relate to wisdom. Wisdom is the ultimate origin of both of Abraham, as we explained last time, that wisdom is called Elokei Abraham in Kabbalah. It's the manifestation of godliness and divinity that is revealed to Abraham, the God of Abraham. And wisdom is also, in the intellectual realm, the power and the origin of creation. Kulam b'chokhmah asita, all was created through wisdom. The word wisdom itself, chokhmah, begins with a chet. So the chet of Chomer stands for chokhmah. The most important image and symbol of wisdom is water. which is the letter Mem. Mem in Hebrew is Mayim, is water. Water descends from a high place, a high side, to a low place. In the same way, wisdom descends from on high in the world of Atzilut, the world of emanation, all the way down to our physical realm. And the third letter, Reish, its literal meaning as a letter is a Rosh, which means a head, and Rosh is an idiom throughout the Torah that pertains to wisdom, as in the phrase Reishit Chochmah, the beginning of wisdom is the awe of Hashem. Reishit Chochmah Yirat Hashem, the very first word of the Torah, Reishit, in the beginning, whose root is head. His head is beginning. So this translation into Aramaic is B'Chochmah, with wisdom. So we see that each of these letters, in the most simple fashion, corresponds to wisdom, just three different facets of wisdom. In particular, wisdom itself has all of the three intellectual faculties to it, which is Chochmah, Binah, and Dat. And if we say that the Chochmah itself, the Chet, is the essence of wisdom, or the insight. Wisdom is a new flash of insight, the flash of wisdom, and then it descends, that flash of wisdom, like water. Water being a physical image and symbol is the binah of Chochmah, the understanding, the conceptualization of wisdom. And then, as a head, which means just a state of consciousness is Dat. So the head of wisdom is the Dat of wisdom. And the reason that we're now explaining this is because if one is familiar, and maybe this will be written up as an appendix to our talk this evening, if one is familiar with the mathematics of permutations, so by knowing the relative origin of the three letters of a word, that ultimately they correspond to wisdom and understanding and doubt, the three intellectual faculties, then it also becomes clear how to position them in how they give rise and give birth to the six attributes of the heart. So the way that we just now explained it comes out very, very directly that Chomer, which is the primordial matter, which equals 248, will fall on Chesed, on loving kindness, and Rechem, which is the womb and the immortal power of compassion, will fall on Tiferet, the Sphira of Tiferet. Chesed, once more, corresponding to Abraham Avinu, and Tiferet corresponding to Yaakov Avinu. Right, so this was our first observation and contemplation this evening, that the simplest word for 248 is Chomer itself. Very interestingly, Chomer is also the root in the Hebrew language of Chamor, which means a donkey. We know that the prophet pictures the Messiah coming on a donkey, and the way this is explained throughout the Torah, even before the revelation of the Kabbalistic text, is that the donkey itself refers, or is an image, a symbol of the matter of the universe. And by riding the donkey means that it's a full understanding and comprehension and actually control of all of matter, meaning that Mashiach will have to be a very, very great physicist and be able to ride and control. First he has to understand, and then he has to be able to control all of the 248 elementary particles or elements of creation. Meaning that physics itself is the donkey of the Messiah. Now we'll go on to another very beautiful and deep meditation of how the number 248 is derived. In our last talk, we explained a simple mathematical function, how from two letters, which are simply two numbers, the number 2 and the number 10, we can derive the number 248. The function was f of ab, a squared plus b squared plus a plus b squared. So now we're going to do something very similar on what in Kabbalah is considered to be the initial or essential point of matter. Once we're matter, we're now using it in its most abstract sense of the raw material, which is not yet a thing at all. We'll go on maybe to explain this more. That comprises the universe that we live in, which obviously comprises our own bodies. The initial point of matter is a yud. Of all of the 22 letters of the alphabet, the letter which is a point, which symbolizes just the initial point of somethingness, or the beginning of something that is going to become, is going to be pregnant, is going to be born. It's like a seminal initial point of reality is the letter Yud. Now every letter in the Hebrew alphabet has a name, that the name is called its milui, its filling in, meaning that it has also pregnant or hidden letters. In order to pronounce the letter in full, you have to add those other letters that produce its name. In other languages, like English for instance, ABC it's not really something new, a new name or new letters that are added to the initial letter in order to produce a meaningful word. It's just a non-significant vowel that is added to the A, B, C, D, E. That's the way that we refer to these letters. But in Hebrew, it's something different altogether. That Aleph, the first letter A, is not just A, it's Aleph. And the second letter B is not just B, B, but it's a bet. And Aleph is a very, very meaningful word, as is bet, and so for every one of the letters of our alphabet of the Hebrew, the holy tongue. Now the letter Yud, which is the 10th letter, and once more its picture, its form, represents a initial seminal point of reality that is going to be developed and is going to evolve into a much fuller form. So the way that it's written in full is Yud Vav Daled. Yud. Sometimes it's understood to be a primordial hand, because the word for hand is just Yud Daled, the first and the last letter of those three letters. But it's not just the hand, because it has a Vav. It has like an arm, an extending arm present into the hand. But the way that it's explained throughout the inner dimension of the Torah, Kabbalah, and Chassidut, is that it's a progression of three stages of spiritual or cognitive evolution. That the Yud is a point, and the Vav, the second letter, is a line, and the third letter, Dalet, is actually two lines. It's two-dimensional. It's from 0 dimension to 1 dimension. A point is 0 dimension. A line is 1 dimensional, and the Dalet is the simplest letter, which represents 2 dimensions. Meaning that what it suggests and what it represents is the evolution of multi-dimensionality. But it all begins from our seminal point. Now what's even more interesting is that the two letters that fill it, the Vav and the Daled, themselves equal 10, because Vav is 6 and Daled is 4, meaning that it's two filling in letters equal the initial letter. Meaning that actually a full Yud is 2 Yuds, And this takes us back to our discussion last time of the simple two-letter word B, in me, from which we derived 248 the last time. But B, when it's added together, is 2 plus 10, which is 12. But we can also multiply the two letters of B together. And then B, the very word B that we were talking so much about last time, becomes 2 times 10, which is 20, which is actually just the Yud itself when it's written in full. One of the great early masters of Kabbalah, Rabbi Avraham Abulafia, so this is the way that he interpreted the word Lev, the heart. That he interpreted the bet of heart, which is actually the second letter, not the first letter of heart, but nonetheless he interpreted the bet to simply be 2, and thereby alluding to Lamed Bet, that the heart is the form that is constructed from 2 Lameds, Lamed times 2, looking at one another face to face, which produces a form which is similar to the human heart. So actually in our case it's even more straightforward, that B, the in me, the bet Yud that we were discussing, is actually elusive simply just bet times Yud, which is 20, which itself is just the letter Yud, but when it's filled in. Now let's now define a new function. And this function will work on any 3 numbers, A, B, C. And the function will be that f of ABC is A times BC. When I say BC, I mean B plus C. A times BC, and B times AC, and C times AB. Meaning that we take each one of the 3 components and multiply it by the sum of the remaining 2. So let's do this for Yud, for the filling, the 3 letters that fill the letter Yud, which is our initial, once we're seminal point of reality, evolving into full multi-dimensional reality. So the Yud times the Vav and the Dalet equal 10, and Yud times Yud also equals 10, so it's 10 times 10, which is 100, which is also one of the 3 components of the way that we derived the 248 from B last time. But the other 2 components will not be the same. So Yud times Vav Dalet is 100, but what about the Vav times Yud Dalet, which is like that arm we said before, entering the 2 letters that equal, that write the word hand, Yad. So it's 6 times 14. 6 times 14 is 84. And then the final part of this formula is 4 times 16, because it's Dalet times Yud Vav. And Dalet times Yud Vav is 64. So now we have 3 numbers, 100, 84 and 64, and when we add them together we see that they equal exactly 248. So this is also very, very interesting and amazing actually formula that gives us 248 just from the initial point of reality, which is the letter Yud, just as the letter Yud is filled in with its 2 pregnant letters of Vav and Dalet. Last time we took the 3, so what were our 3 components last time that gave us 248? They were 4 and 100 and 144. 2 squared, 10 squared, and 12 squared. And we saw how they also create a quadratic series to them. That the average value of the 5 positive members of that series is 92, the number of natural elements in chemistry. We'll return to that number and that concept shortly, But now we have another quadratic series that we have to examine, which is 64, 84, and 100. So this series, in a certain sense, is even more interesting because it's, first of all, it's what's called a symmetric series. Our last series was not symmetric. We'll now see this as symmetric series. That how do we again continue describe and write out the numbers of the series by taking finite differences. From 64 to 84 is 20, from 84 to 100 is 16, meaning that the basis of this series is -4, from 16 to 20, meaning that the number before 64 will be 64 minus 12, which is, it's 64 minus 16, which is 48. One second, let me say it again. It's we have 64 minus 24, because we have a minus 24. The number before that will be 64 minus 24, which is 40. And then the number before that will be 40 minus 28, which is 12. That will be the first positive number, because if we go back further, we'll get minus numbers. So actually the first 5 numbers of this series are 12, 40, 64, 84, 100. Now let's continue after the 100. After the 100 it will be 112, the number that I mistakenly mentioned before. It will be 100 plus 12, which is 112. And then after the 112, the next number, which is going to be the highest and last number that ascends in this series, is 124. And then the number after 124 will be one more 124, which makes this series symmetric. And then after the second 124, it will go back to 112, and to 100, and to 84, and to 64, and to 40, and to 12. Alright, so now let's look at this beautiful symmetric series that has been created from the simple letter Yud when it's filled in with its 2 additional letters of Vav and Dalet, based upon the function that we just defined. So once more I'll repeat the numbers in order that whoever wants to write them down can write them down and enjoy looking at them. That the numbers are the first number is 12, and then 40, and then 64, and 84, and 100, and 112, and 124, and then once more another 124, and then it goes back 112, and 100, and 84, and 64, and 40, and 12. So now, if we just look very simply at this, as we just began from the 3 numbers 64 and 84 and 100, which gave us the 248. And there's no reason on earth to expect that other numbers in this series will also allude to 248. But the first amazing observation is that the 2 numbers in the middle were identical, which create this the symmetry of this series. The series goes up to 124, and then it repeats itself another 124, and those goes down once more. That's the way that you describe this as a graph is a parabola that whose infinite arms descend down, which means into the world of minus numbers, and has a high point at the top. And the high point at the top is actually 2 times 124. Once more, there's no way to guess that we're going to get 2 124s at the top of this parabola. The 2 124s themselves equal exactly 248. So meaning the 248 is here the apex of this parabola. Now, what adds to our amazement is that the 2 lowest positive numbers on each side of the parabola are 12 and 12. The 12 is our number B, the number that we saw last time to give us the 248. And as we saw last time, B equals Zeh. And we know that the angels, the Srafim, the fiery angels in the world of Priyah, call to one another, that they call from one another from Zeh, from this to this, which we can now allude to, that the way that they're calling from Zeh to Zeh is through the means of this parabola, that they're going all the way up from Zeh to 124, and then once more from 124 all the way back to Zeh. And so we have two very, very beautiful manifestations in this series of numbers that gives us, that alludes to everything that we've talked about up until now, about 248. And like once more, the way that we can is simply by taking this formula of Yud Vav Daled, and seeing that it gives us three numbers, 64, 84, and 100, which together equal 248. But then all of a sudden we discovered there's another 248 at the top, divided into two equal segments, and the bottom is 12 and 12, which is Karazeh al Zeh. We said before at the beginning that when we say that we were talking about the word chomer, matter, so we're using it in such a sense that it's so primordial and so abstract that it includes both what now in modern physics is called matter particles, or force particles, or virtual particles. That type of matter in Hebrew, in Kabbalah, which is totally abstract and primordial, meaning the first matter to be created from nothing, from absolute nothing, is called Chomer Hiyudi. Ethereal matter. Hiyudi is a word that originates in Greek, but it was adopted, meaning that it was converted into Hebrew by the sages. The very word Hiyuli equals ayin, nothing, nothingness. But it's matter which is still a totally formless state. When Dirac said that an electron is not a thing, so he meant that it is not a thing that has no form. You can't define it and describe it with any form whatsoever. So that's exactly the way primordial matter is defined in Kabbalah, as Hiyuli, formless matter. Because any matter that we can think of has form to it, but Chomer Hiyuli is without form. There's another term for Hiyuli, which is Chomer Gelem. The difference being that Chomer Hiyuli, the concept of Hiyuli, would be the way matter is in its most primordial state in the world of creation, when it still has no form whatsoever. Whereas in general, when you speak of the words of the term Chomer Gelem, you're talking about raw material, such as clay, which the potter is now going to take and form into a vessel. Or as we mentioned last time, that Hashem will take the clay, will take the earth, or the dust of the earth, and together with moisture that makes it amenable and workable, will then, just as a potter, create the body of the human being from the clay. So that raw matter is referred to as Chomer Gelem. That would be the yesh that precedes the yesh of the world of Yetzirah. And the matter that is created from absolute ayin, which still appears to be as ayin, and that's why Hiyuli equals ayin, in the world of Bri'ah is Hiyuli. So once more, we have the ayin before creation, and then we have the initial creation in the world of creation, that the ayin becomes yesh me ayin, but that yesh is still just called efshariyut hametziut, it's potential reality, and it's called Hiyuli. But that Hiyuli itself becomes the yesh for the second stage of creation, which is called formation, meaning that Hiyuli itself becomes the Chomer Gelem for the formation of the world of formation. Now the word Gelem itself, probably many of us know that Gelem is like a golem. It's the same word. Something which is, it's raw material, but it's not yet completely formed in the final form that it is intended to assume. The word Gelem is also very important in its numerical number, that it equals 73, which is Chokhmah, wisdom. Even the Yud that we were talking about before, the Yud which is the seminal point of reality, so that Yud very often is referred to as Gelem, because it's Chokhmah, it's the Nekudat Gelem that everything is formed from. The simple idiom or description is that if a scribe with his quill is about to write a letter on the parchment, so he wettens his quill with ink. And also very, very interestingly, the word for ink itself is a permutation of the word Yud, because the word for ink is Dio. Yud is Yud Vav Dalet, and ink is Dalet Yud Vav. It's a permutation of those same three letters that fill in the word Yud, the letter Yud. He takes his quill and puts it into the bowl of the ink, and then takes out a drop on the tip of his quill, and that drop, when it's put now on the parchment, that is the Gelem. That is the first Chomer Gelem that he is now going to form a letter, one of the letters of the alphabet from that drop of ink, much more like a seminal drop. So it even says that every letter, when a scribe writes a letter on the parchment, he always begins with a Yud, with a point, and also the end is a point. There's a point at the beginning, a point at the end. The two most essential names of Hashem, which is Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei and Shem Adnut, when they are put together, whoever has seen a Sidur with the Kabbalistic intentions in it, Kabbanot, so the interweaving of the two names together begins with the Yud and ends with the Yud. It's called Chokhmah Barosh, Chokhmah Basof. There's a point at the beginning, a point of wisdom at the beginning, a point of wisdom at the end. So that represents how every letter and everything in creation is formed, with a Gelem at the beginning and a Gelem, a Chomer Gelem at the end. 2 times Gelem gives us 148, which Olam, the world, meaning reality as we experience it. Right, so now this will take us to another stage of meditation. As we just now said, that these two drops of formation, the drop at the beginning and the drop at the end, which is Gelem and Gelem, give us the word world. At the very beginning of our talk last time, we explained the 248, the most important meaning of 248 in the Torah, the 248 positive commandments. It's just that they have two dimensions to them, because they have an active dimension to them, and they have an intentional or thought reality to them. And we saw that 2 times 248 is Abraham, whose name was repeated at the binding of Yitzchak, the Akedat Yitzchak. And together it equals Malchut, the last of the 10 Sfirot, which is the triangular number of 31 of Kel, Hashem's name Kel, which is the name of Chesed itself. There are 248 positive commandments and 365 negative commandments, prohibitive commandments, altogether 613. When the 248 are repeated twice, so that gives us 861 actually, which once more becomes a triangular number, the triangle of 41. It equals the term Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple. It equals Rosh Hashanah, the first day, the head of the year. all of the numbers from 1 to 41, meaning that actually 365 are all of the numbers from 32 to 41, because from 1 to 31 is 2 times 248. And when I now add 365, so I receive the triangle of 41, meaning that just that 365 by itself is the continuation of the numbers from, I already reached 31, now I continue from 32 until 41. That gives me the 861. Before we mentioned the concept of filling in a letter or filling in a word. If I take just that, the word aseh, mitzvot aseh, remach mitzvot aseh, 248 positive command do's. Just the word aseh. Also last time we were talking about the difference between bara and asa, creation and making. Aseh is the same 3 letters as in the past tense, asa, he made. It depends on the way that you punctuate, vocalize the word. It can either be read, Ein, Sin, Hey, can either be read asa, he made, or aseh, do, in the imperative. So in either way, when we fill it in, Ein, Sin, Hey, so it now comes out to equal exactly 496, which is 2 times 248. That was a very beautiful thing that we didn't mention last time. And in a very, very clear and direct indication that the aseh, everything that you do, actually has 2 times 248 to it, which is malchut to it, because the very word aseh in full equals 2 times 248. Right, now let's go back to Abraham 248, which are the positive commandments, and then 365, which are the prohibitive commandments. 365 is, if we analyze it into its prime components, so it's 5 times 73. 73 we just saw now is the golem, the chomer gelem, chokhmah, wisdom. Both 5 and 73 are prime numbers. 5 is the 4th prime number, and 73 is the 22nd prime number. As a prime number, 73 wisdom reflects the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet through which the world was created. That's 365. 5 times 73. 248 is, first of all, it's an even number, so it divides by 2. But we saw last time there's actually 8 times 31. 31 is the 12th prime number. 8 is 2 to the 3rd, meaning that 28, 248, its prime elements are 2, 2, 2, 31. 2, 2, 2, 31, when added together, gives us, this is another function that's used in Kabbalah, that you reduce or you express a number by its prime components, and instead of multiplying them together, you add them together. So for 248, that is called the yesod, the foundation of the number 248 is another number which is 37, 2, 2, 2, 31. 37 is also a very, very important number about creation. It's one of the first souls that appears in the Torah, Hevel. It also equals the Yechidah Shabanefesh. The very first verse of the Torah, Breshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'haaretz, is a multiple of 37. It actually has a myriad of multiples of 37 in it. It's 37 times 73. Not only is 37 the 73 written backwards, but 37 is also the middle point of 73, meaning that the first verse of the Torah, which is 37 times 73, is the triangle of 73. In the second verse we read V'ruach Elokim rachevet al pnei hamayim, that the spirit of God was hovering over the waters. That equals 37 squared. The next verse, or the 4th verse in the Torah, that reads Vayar Elokim et or ki tov, Vayavdel Elokim ben or ben hachoshech, that God saw the light to be good, and He separated the light from the darkness. That equals 1,770 and 76, which is 48 times 37. And so forth and so on. There are a multitude of 37s, both in the very first verse of the Torah, and throughout the first day, and throughout all of creation. So 248, its Yesod is 37. What about 365? We said 365 is 5 times 73, meaning that its Yesod is 78. 78 is 3 times 26, Hashem's essential name. When those two numbers are added together, 37 and 78, the Yesodot of 248 and 365, so we have 115, which is 5 times 23. 23 is the companion number of 37 in Kabbalah. That is not now explained. In any event, this was all slightly parenthetical, that the number 365 is 5 times 73. What about 248? So we said that 248 has to do with the gold, and it has to do something with the 73. It's not a multiple of 73. Well, how does 73 relate to our 248? So the way it's explained in Kabbalah is that Abraham, who equals 248, he begins his divine service with simple faith, which is transcendent, above wisdom. But from his simple faith, which is emunah, in God, in the Creator, and a simple faith which actually served to reveal to him the Creator. By searching, you first believe that God is here, and then you have to search to experience, to find Him. And Abraham devoted himself and had Mesirut Nefesh, self-sacrifice, in order to search for the Creator in whom he believed, and he found Him, and throughout his life he found Him more and more. And the more that he found Him, the more that he attained divine wisdom, higher wisdom and lower wisdom. But first it begins with emunah. So the way it's explained in Kabbalah is that Abraham is first emunah. The word emunah is 102. And then he receives 2 levels of wisdom. And when you add together emunah plus 1 wisdom, 1 times wisdom, which is 73, emunah is 102, you get 175. 175 is exactly the lifespan of Abraham. He lived 175 years. Meaning that his lifespan is the union of faith and wisdom. But then when you give him another 73, which is to bring down the higher wisdom into lower wisdom, say the divine or the spiritual wisdom into even physical wisdom, like the wisdom of nature, the wisdom of physics, you give him his second wisdom, then it becomes exactly 248. Meaning that Abraham is faith and then olam. That olam is 2 times gedem, 2 times wisdom. It's emunah, chokhmah. But then shesa is another 5 times wisdom. Meaning that the secret of 613 is 1 level of faith, and then 7 levels of wisdom. We're taught that there are 7 wisdoms in the world. And the 7 wisdoms correspond to the seven arms of the candelabra of the menorah and the Beit HaMikdash. And according to Halacha, the way that they're lit is they're divided into 2 and into 5. So what we have a form which is a very, very beautiful and essential form that gives us both 248 and 365, which is everything begins from emunah. That's the one, and then there are 7 levels of wisdom which evolve. First there are 2, that the emunah plus 2 wisdoms gives us the 248, and then there are another 5 wisdoms which give us 365, and altogether it now is exactly 613. 1 to 7 is the word az, aleph zayin, 1 above 7. Also a very important word in the Torah, like Az Yashir Moshe, the first word of the Song of the Sea, and it says the word that gives rise or inspires in the soul all singing to God, is the word Az, 1 to 7. The whole Torah is called a song. And as we said before, the Az itself, the Zayin, divides into Bet, into 2 and 5, Bet into Hey. There's a verse that also reflects this beautifully towards the end of the Torah in the second great song of the Torah, which is called Shirat HaAzinu, that Moshe Rabbeinu sings to Hashem before he passes away at the end of the Torah. So he says there, Kel emunah ve'en aval tzaddik v'yashar hu. He says that God is a God of faith. He is righteous and He is straight. So those three words have exactly the secret of this ratio to them. That emunah is 102. So first God is described as Kel emunah. Kel is our name, Kel 31. He's Kel emunah, 102. And then he's called Tzaddik v'Yashar. Tzaddik is 204, which is 2 times 102. And Yashar is 510, which is 5 times 102. So in our case, we had 102 and then 7 73s, which are divided into 2 73s and 5 70s. Here it's all 102. It's 1 times 102, and then 2 times 102, and then 5 times 102. Kel emunah ve'en avel tzaddik v'yashar hu. Alright, so this was just to give us a sense that the two numbers, 248 and 365, definitely relate to one another, and the way that we now explain this, actually 365 comes out of the 248. The 248 is more original, even though often Kabbalah, based on the verse and explained in the Zohar, the prohibitive commandments come from the 2 first letters of Hashem's name, Yud-Kei, whereas the positive commandments relate to the 2 final letters of Hashem's name, Vav-Kei, which gives the impression that the Yud-Kei, that the positive ones precede the negative ones precede the positive ones. But really we're taught that in Hashem's will, which is the Keter, it's all the mitzvot come from the Keter Elyon, from the supernal will and pleasure of Hashem and faith of Hashem. There the pleasure of the positive commandments precedes the origin of the prohibitive or negative commandments. Because really the reason for all the prohibitive commandments is just to allow the light that is drawn down by the positive commandments to enter reality. As if a person transgresses one of the prohibitive commandments, then that creates a blockage that the light of the positive commandments cannot permeate reality. So really the prohibitive commandments are for the sake of the function of the positive commandments. Alright, so now based upon this, that we see this very, very strong relation between our Ramach and Shesar. The 248 and the 365. So we'll now go on to examine another beautiful thing, an array of, this is maybe the most sophisticated thing that we've now done so far mathematically. An array of numbers that we can see exactly where 365 is positioned, where 613 is positioned, where 248 is also positioned. .365 and 613 have a common form to them. They're both inspirational numbers, meaning that they're both numbers of the form a squared plus a minus 1 squared. 613 is the 18th inspirational number. This has a geometric form which I have to show on a paper. 613 is the 18th high inspirational because it's 18 squared plus 17 tov squared. 365 is the 14th inspirational number because it's 14 squared plus 13 squared. Now every inspirational number, any number of the form a squared plus a minus 1 squared must be an odd number. Because one of the two is odd and the other is even. And odd and even always gives you an odd number, meaning that The 248, which is the difference between two odd numbers, must be an even number. But an even number cannot be an inspirational number, so necessarily the difference between any two inspirational numbers cannot give you another inspirational number. Meaning in our case that 248 cannot be inspirational, it's simply because it's an even number. But how can maybe in some way we can see where it falls in some array of numbers that possesses the inspirational number series in it. So how do we arrive mathematically at the inspirational numbers? We begin with triangular numbers, 1, 3, 6, 10, and so forth. And then by adding two triangular numbers together, we get a square number. Like 1 plus 3 is 4, 2 squared. 3 plus 6 is 9, 3 squared. 6 plus 10 is 16, 4 squared. With every two triangular numbers together will give you a square number. The same thing exactly is when we add two square numbers together. That's what gives us that's the definition of an inspirational number. So if I begin and I write on line number 1 the 7 first, sevens are dear, the 7 first triangular numbers, 1, 3, 6, 10, 15, 21, and 28. And then under them I write by using this process of just adding two together, the one above and the one preceding, and another 7, so I'll get 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, and 49. And then the next line will give me the first 7 inspirational numbers, which are 1, 5, 13, 25, 41, 61, 85. If I continue that line, I'll get 365, and then I'll get 613. Then if I do another two lines exactly in that manner, so the 7th number of the 5th line will be 248. And it will be the sum of two numbers on the 4th line, which are 102 and 146. 102 and 146 are remarkably just exactly the way we analyzed 248 a moment ago, because it's emunah and 2 times chokhmah. So in this mathematical array, actually now we have 35 numbers in this array. Those 35 numbers can be seen to correspond to the 35 words of Vayachulu that we talked about last time. Even Vayachulu itself can be written as 5 lines of 7 words, 7 by 5. In this array, the last number, which is in Vayachulu, the word La'asot, which is 31 times 26. Abraham 248 is 31 times 8. So that word La'asot now corresponds in our array to Abraham, to 248, and La'asot are the positive commandments, because this is what Hashem created the word La'asot. So we now have an array of 35 numbers, 5 by 7. The last number corresponding to the last word of Vayachulu, La'asot, is 248, and it's composed by two numbers which are 102 and 146. Which are emunah and 2 times chokhmah. Now the whole 35 numbers of this array gives us 7 times light, 7 times Ein Sof, all. We're taught that Avraham hitchil laha'ir, he was the first one to shine light into the world, which means to shine divine consciousness into the world. So again, this array has to be studied and written, and we have to see how this array corresponds to the 35 words of Vayachulu. But it begins with the number 1, Echad Haya Avraham, and it ends with the number 248. And the middle line is the line of the inspirational numbers, which in its continuation gives us both 365 and 613. So with this we'll end this session, and we can now begin our next session.